This is the new Audi S3, and I think it looks fantastic. So much sharper and more aggressive than its predecessor, and with big box arches, akin to an RS6.
And that got me thinking, S3, RS6. Is this half an RS6? Divide 6 by 2, you get 3. Take R away from S, you get S. S3, half an RS6. And as it happens, this time last year we went on a bit of a road trip with an RS6. So why not do the same with this S3? Sure, we're not in America, but who needs America? Middle England will have to do.
So, switching Route 66 for the A6 and swapping out a Hershey's for a Cadbury's, we set off on our adventure.
We've got almost exactly half the power of an RS6, almost exactly half the torque as well, and 4-cylinder versus 8-cylinder, both turbocharged, half the capacity too.
The S3's exact figures are 306 brake horsepower and 295 pounds-foot of torque, transmitted to the road via a 7-speed S-tronic dual-clutch gearbox and Quattro all-wheel drive. Now, those figures might seem familiar because they are identical to the old S3, which was actually a couple of tenths quicker to 62 as well, possibly because it weighed 35 kilos less. To be honest though, that old car felt rather lacking in pizzazz in the powertrain department, and I think it was because the new WLTP regulations had forced it to be dulled down.
Thankfully this new one's much better. Throttle response is noticeably crisper, and although it's obviously not an inline 5 or a V6 or a straight 6, it does sound much more interesting. It actually sounds like it does sound like a bigger engine than a 4-cylinder. There's a sort of a deep-chested, quite a grumbly sound from it. I think it sounds better in here than it does from outside. It does actually sound a bit like half an RS6. In terms of straight line performance, it's certainly quick. It doesn't feel absolutely rabid, I'd have to say. It feels perhaps still a little bit tight. This hasn't got that many miles on it yet, and it does feel like it could just perhaps free up a little bit.
Anyway, time for our first stop on this local road trip. And while we're not covering the vast distances through canyons and across deserts like we did in the RS6, we have gone round many, many more roundabouts to get here.
And while yes, America has its Death Valley National Park, here we have the Ouse Valley Park, all 48 hectares of it. And yeah, fair enough, we saw some extraordinary weather out there in Death Valley with snow. But here too, it's a pretty extraordinary day. It looks like the sun might break through later. More cows here too than Death Valley, both real and concrete.
Talking of concrete, what's the suspension like?
The ride is still distinctly Audi. It has that firm, flat feeling, but no longer is it the sort of the really wooden feel it had before, like it's got its packing springs left in. There is more nuance to it, thankfully.
The ride could in fact be even better.
You see, this is on the standard passive dampers, and I like passive dampers. The more I've driven this, the more I thought, oh, it's just nice turning into a corner and always knowing the response you're going to get. However, it is quite firm, and obviously there's no way of adjusting that with these. There is an adjustable damper setup that you can have as an option, and I think that would probably give just a bit more flow, a bit more lean perhaps, certainly more ride comfort most of the time. But would it feel as nice? In terms of handling, well, there's nothing really wrong with it. It doesn't sort of wallowy, understeery Audi like legend would have all fast Audis to be. Far from it. It's just very, very neat, very crisp in fact. Turn-in is excellent, and it just carves through corners. But there isn't really a lot of adjustability to be had.
It doesn't exactly trip the light fantastic then, although the optional matrix LED lights can do a little dance, just like the RS6. Another area in which I think the S3 feels at least half like an RS6 is inside. In terms of boot space, the S3 is actually more than half an RS6, with 325 litres seats up and 1,145 litres seats down, representing, in case you're interested, 57.5 and 68.1% of the larger car's capacity. I'd say the rest of the inside is actually very close to the more expensive car too.
The interior to this it's lovely. It's really, really classy. I feel like it's gone down the sort of Mercedes route in a way, in terms of, well, the A-Class has certainly taken a lot of inspiration from the E-Class and really feels every bit as special as its more expensive brethren. And this is the same, all the sort of the stitching along there, the big screen we've got down here. Touchscreens, obviously, I'm not a huge fan. I like having something like the iDrive or the MMI that Audi used to have, and I wish it still had that. However, it's actually still relatively easy just here to get to it. It's a big screen, and we've got nice physical controls down here for the air conditioning and things like heated seats and stuff like that. So they are all still away from the touchscreen, and that is definitely a good thing. So a bit of a compromise perhaps, and not a bad one. I love the architecture around this instrument binnacle here as well, with these two vents here framing it, and then that screen which goes all the way out to the edges. It's not just sort of set into an odd shaped hole. One other thing that does irritate me is the fact they put the drive select button all the way down here, and then it comes up on the screen, and then you have to do stuff to it's out of the way. It should be up here somewhere, more accessible. Thankfully in this, because it's on the passive dampers, really you can just set how you like. So set the steering, set the engine to sort of balanced or auto, so that it just always adapts, and then engine sound I've got to its most aggressive, and then you can just leave it alone. A couple of little points about the controls in here. Steering wheel is very nice. It's nice size, feels good in the hands. Paddles, still small and plastic and not my favourite. Also, you can't now change gear down here, because we saw Porsche do it first with the sort of the little shaver or whatever you want to call it down there, and then VW's gone that way as well, and so obviously Audi have as well. And it's an odd little thing. It actually feels quite nice to use. The way it sort of rocks back and forth, yeah, feels like a quality item, and it's metal, but I kind of miss the stick for just being able to use it like a sequential. I'm sure it's a cost saving though.
Of course, if you miss that feeling, then you could go and seek out a one-armed bandit. And you don't need to go to Nevada for that. Oh no.
It's basically Vegas. Some would say better, actually. Some.
And how much would you need to win to buy an S3? Well, at just under £37,000, the starting price of an S3 is about 40% of the cost of a standard RS6.
So there we are. Audi S3. Half an RS6. Sort of. Just like Middle England is half of California. Sort of.
Alright, so comparing the S3 to its much loved, larger Avant brother is just a bit of fun really. Although I maintain that the design inside and out bears comparison. Dynamically, the S3 drives very well without being particularly special or interesting. If I had to describe its dynamics in one word, it would be clean. Its cousin, the GTI Club Sport, is certainly more entertaining for similar money. Here's hoping then that a new RS3 arrives very soon. Those archers deserve it.
Mm-hmm.